I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney. 551.074, to discuss personnel or to hear complaints against personnel, and the time is 5:30. The board will now reconvene into open session, and the time is 6:40. On behalf of the trustees, I would like to welcome you to this evening's meeting of the Northeast Independent School Board. This is a business meeting of the board held in public. We appreciate your attendance and request your respectful attention. We welcome your comments during the Matters from the Floor section of the agenda. If you signed up to address a specific action agenda item, you will be called at that time. We wish to emphasize that this is a business meeting of the board, and while those in attendance may disagree about issues, it is our expectation that everyone will conduct themselves in a respectful and professional manner. Disruptions to this meeting by anyone will not be tolerated. In the event any person or group disrupts the meeting, a warning will be given to stop any disruptive behavior. Anyone persisting in disruptive behavior will be removed from the meeting. The board may also call a recess in the event of persistent disruptions so that individuals who engage in disruptions can be removed. It is our intent to conduct the meeting in an orderly fashion. Finally, I would like to remind you that it is the mission of Northeast to challenge and encourage each student to achieve and demonstrate academic excellence, technical skills, and responsible citizenship. Item 5, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. A, Eisenhower Middle School. Mr. Herrera.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. My name is Jason Herrera, and I am the proud principal of Eisenhower Middle School. Tonight, it is my pleasure to introduce two amazing Eisenhower students. Tonight, providing the invocation is 8th grader Sophia Garcia. Joining Sophia tonight is her mother, Mrs. Marcelina Garcia, her father, Mr. Ramon Garcia, and her sister, Grace. Sophia is involved in athletics and PALS. Sophia's teachers say Sophia is a role model student that exudes leadership above her peers. She is a beautiful person inside and out. She is patient with others and determined to succeed. She genuinely cares for those around her. She is constantly looking how to make things better than they were before, and doesn't settle for anything less than excellent. Even when a task is daunting or overwhelming, she attacks it with poise and determination and always comes out on top. Leading the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge is 8th grader Isaac Jones. Isaac tonight is joined by his mother, Quiana Jones. Isaac is an avid student and an Eisenhower band member. Isaac's teachers say Isaac is a student who is hardworking, thoughtful, smart, kind, and an amazing writer. He is creative with his work and has a great sense of detail. He will be a student that I will never forget. He has a genuine drive and determination that is infectious. Isaac takes every assignment he has seriously, always giving his best effort. He is also inquisitive and thinks outside the box. His self-confidence is so impressive. This time I'll have Miss Sophia Garcia.
Good evening. First, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of all of you who are gathered here today. I invite you to please bow your head with me. God of grace, we are gathered here tonight in faith and good intentions. We ask that you fill this boardroom with strength, courage, and wisdom, that we are guided and supported in making proper decisions for our families, students, and EISD staff, and our community. Please continue to bless and guide our administration and staff of NEISD who support our students and families. We ask for protection as we travel home this evening. We pray this trusting and believing in you. Amen.
Now we will begin the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now for the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you. And Sophia and Isaac, if you'll come forward, please. We have certificates for you, and Mrs. Huey will take a picture with you and Dr. Micah and Mr. Herrera. I want to thank you all for being here, and you are welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to leave. And y'all have a great evening. Thanks again.
Thank you.
You both did a very nice job. Item 6, recognitions. A, President's remarks on acknowledgement of special calendar events. So this month, all right, National Nurses Week is May 6th through the 12th, and Nurses Day is May 11th. So we want to celebrate all of our nurses for everything that you do for our students. Let's give a round of applause for all of our nurses. May 9th through 16th is Police Recognition Week. So let's give a round of applause to all of our police officers. We really appreciate everything that you do on our campuses and central office. And Chief, thank you for everything that you do for us. Appreciate it. May is Better Speech and Hearing Month. It's a time to celebrate the speech team as well as staff that support students with auditory impairments. So let's give a round of applause to our speech team and staff. And it's not on here, but also May is Teacher Appreciation. We just celebrated Teacher Appreciation Week last week. Congratulations to all the Teacher of the Year nominees and to our elementary and secondary winners. That was a very nice event that we had last week. Item B, Student Volunteer of the Year. They are not here, is that correct? And we're going to move this to next month, okay? Item C, 2021-2022 6A Boys Singles Tennis State Tournament Results. Reagan High School, Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Kelly Parker's on his way to the podium to address this agenda item.
Recently, San Antonio was able to host the state championship for UIL in the state of Texas, and we had some success, a lot of success, actually. Today, we have Kyle Todorica. Come on in, Kyle. Kyle is from Reagan, and Kyle is actually the 6A state tennis champion in boys singles for 2022. And with him, we have his coach, Coach David Daniel.
If y'all will wait for a picture, please. Congratulations, that's amazing.
Mom, do you want to come and take a picture? I want you at the championship pacing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Congratulations again. Item D, 2021-2022, 6A girls doubles tennis state tournament results, Madison High School. Mr. Parker.
I'm also proud to announce we had another finisher at the
That'll be you.
state tournament. 6A state tennis third place in girls doubles. We have Maya Bowe and her partner Mattia Bowe. And yes, they are sisters. And their coach Diana Riegel was unable to be here tonight, but she sends her regrets on that.
Okay. Congratulations. And Ms. Winkley is bringing your certificate, and Dr. Micah. Congratulations again. Item E, NEISD COVID-19 testing team, Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Mike, executive guests, and staff. I want to talk about the NEISD COVID-19 team. It was formed in August of 2021. This group was tasked with providing rapid COVID testing to NEISD students and employees at the Northeast Sports Park, and with providing guidance and recommendations to employees with questions about various COVID situations. During the school year alone, they performed more than 6,000 rapid tests, and about 3,300 of those tests occurred in the 18 days of school in January. They also answered questions and provided recommendations to about 3,000 employees. Their hard work and dedication provided information, answers, and peace of mind to thousands of parents and employees in a time when things changed so rapidly. The COVID-19 team offered services that were greatly needed by the NISD community. We do want to take a moment to recognize the impact of the COVID-19 team has had on helping students and employees return to school safely and as quickly as possible. The COVID-19 team members present are Diane Rhodes, Lisa Benagas, Virginia Samaripa, JT Torres, and Jacob Flores. And three members of the team weren't able to make it: Teresa Vernado, Sabrina Martinez, and Israel Olagundoyi.
Item 7, matters from the floor. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this time of the meeting. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As explained fully in the board's written procedures for this time, the matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related to district business for up to 3 minutes, but are not permitted to make 1, personal complaints about an individual staff or board member that should be raised using the district's grievance policies, 2, a personnel action, 3, a student disciplinary matter, 4, a complaint about a particular student, 5, or pending litigation. If you signed up to speak on a specific agenda item, you will be called up when the board reaches that item. Any person who persists in speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. We also welcome written comments at any time, either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail, care of the superintendent's office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas, 78217. Ms. Huey.
Number 1,
hello. I'm here today because I want to talk about a serious issue affecting my son. My name is Bianca Ramirez.
Thank you.
My son is in 3rd grade and he's a student in the NEISD district. He has autism spectrum disorder and other disabilities. He's nonverbal, and when he is not in school and there are breaks, he regresses. And what happens when he regresses is he has an increase in unsafe behaviors. He loses developmental milestones, and he loses skills that he once had. Since the pandemic, he has regressed so much, to the point where we're still trying to catch up to where he was before. I'm a single parent, and my child has a disability. We face so many barriers to services and support for children with special needs, especially in the community. There is no daycare in the district right now that will take care of my son, because they're not equipped to take care of children with special needs. And that puts us in a very difficult situation. Because when my son is not in summer school, which they offer him every year, he regresses. And for him, he needs this. My son elopes, and when he elopes, it puts him in danger. He has no sense of danger, and it puts him at risk for getting lost or even getting hit by a car, getting taken by a stranger, or death. For families with disabilities, we face more adversity than the average family, and we face more challenges than you probably don't know or recognize. For us, it's really difficult, especially as a single parent. My son was offered extended school year this year, but because extended school year is only from 8 to 12, it's not possible for us because I can't get out of work every single day to get him from school and then take him to the only daycare that will accommodate him, which is Respite Care of San Antonio, which happens to be in the SAISD district. So for us, that means we miss out on that extended school year that he greatly needs. And without that, he regresses, and that puts us in a very difficult and dangerous situation. There's no inclusion in childcare anywhere in the district. Summer school is half day. How does that help parents like me? The transportation won't go to SAISD. There is not enough support for students with disabilities or single parents. There needs to be more educational equity and support for students with disabilities because we do face more challenges than
That's
the
your
average
time.
family.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Number 2,
Hi, my name is Aaliyah, and I'm speaking on the same topic as the person before me, access to the same privileges that other students that are neurotypical have. So to make this really brief, I'm one of 6, and one of my brothers is nonverbal autistic. And so like in the 90s and the 2000s, in a different district, I grew up seeing what it was like to have a sibling that didn't have the same access to the education that even his other siblings did, that other students did. And I saw myself what regression looked like over the summer. My brother didn't have access to ABA therapy, but just even having access to the routine that school provided was enough for him, and it was enough to throw off his game like during the summer. I recently worked with an agency that was contracted with NEISD, and right now I'm like working in a hospital, but the students that I was working with, a lot of them had siblings that were also not neurotypical, like they were somewhere on the spectrum. And so I'd like for y'all to consider maybe that some of the parents that y'all are able to hear out are just a small fraction of the students that actually live in NAISD, and maybe these kinds of issues aren't things that are as uncommon as they might seem. That's it. Thank you.
Number 3.
Good evening. I just needed to come up here just for the sake of my daughter. My name is DeAndrea Kraft. I've lived in Texas for 2 years, and me and my students have always lived in the NEISD school district. I picked this school district for its high rating as the best school district in the city, but also for its diversity. San Antonio has a 6.95% black population, according to the worldpopulationreview.com. And so most of that population really resides here in this school district. So to my dismay, there was a girl in my daughter's 4th grade class that called my daughter the N-word. The teacher at the school called me and advised me there had been some racially charged words, but they were handling it. The vice principal and the principal assured me that they were taking their precautions by keeping the girls apart in different classes. And for the most part, that's all that was available to be offered to my daughter and our family. My daughter really didn't understand the depth of that word, so we had to have a deeper conversation. For example, I had to explain to her how a lynching and a picnic literally simultaneously are intertwined. And so the fact that I'm the only party here, helping my student understand, the pure hatred behind that word and why it's not okay to say it in public, let alone just out in general in a 4th grade class, it's frustrating. I know as a school district you can't help what's being taught at a student's home, but you can pull all your efforts together to promote a safe space for all children. So here, I just wanted to make sure that my black daughter should not feel these words here labeling her, and I wanted to protect her person. We need educators or doctors or therapists to make appearances at the schools if necessary, to educate students on, proper communication skills, historical events, real-life dangers, like we did when we were children and we had those auditorium meetings. I don't think a lot of times people forget how valuable that was and how that kind of ingrained in that little mind that special moment that they had to discuss these things. So, yeah, that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Number 5.
Good evening, Dr. Micah, President Grona, members of the board, and executive staff. My name is Roxanne Brown, and I'm a proud NEISD parent. This evening, I would like to address the topic of graduation regalia. While requirements regarding this topic do not seem to be found in board policy, perhaps this is a discussion for executive staff. It has recently come to my attention that graduating seniors are not permitted to wear the on-ramps cord provided by the UT On-Ramps program. My request is simply that this district practice be revisited to consider allowing the wearing of these cords at graduation. Currently, seniors are only permitted to wear honor cords with distinctions, for GPA. NEISD has placed significance on college and career readiness, and students' completion of on-ramps courses align with this district goal. The on-ramps cord serves as a visual recognition of completion of additional challenging courses that are aligned with college expectations. NEISD has done a great job of recognizing student accomplishments, and this is one more way to recognize the accomplishments of NEISD seniors. Thank you for your consideration of amending this practice.
And number 6.
Good evening. Excuse me. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, my name is Tom Cummins and I'm representing Northeast AFT. In a previous meeting we held with the administration, AFT presented its pay proposal for the district employees. Our proposal, as you will see, is what should be and what the district must work for. According to the Economic Policy Institute, Texas teachers are paid 20% less than their non-teaching college graduate counterparts. Also, as you know, teachers are quitting all over the state. And it's a problem in Northeast too, I can assure you. What would change that? Well, a significant pay raise would, but it's also would need a manageable workload. Teachers are overloaded right now. Our pay proposal that we did present for teachers, librarians, nurses, counselors, and other non-administrative personnel, professionals, is an 8% increase with a $2,000 retention supplement. For hourly employees, we asked for a $15 starting pay with each employee's pay family increased proportionately, so there is no compression, resulting in varying percentage increases for those employees, as well as a $2,000 retention supplement. For health insurance, we request no increase to employees and no lessening of benefits. And finally, the substitute pay must be increased dramatically. We can't be pulling teachers from their regular schedule to fill vacancies. It hurts the students immensely. And these are what the goals must be, and we urge you to work towards that. Thank you very much.
Item 8, matters from executive session. A, personnel, including but not limited to administrative appointments pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. 1, possible action regarding routine personnel, including but not limited to administrative appointments. No action. Item 2, possible action regarding termination of Chapter 21 term contract employee. Do I have a motion to approve as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item 3, possible action regarding proposed recommendation for non-renewal of Chapter 21 term contract employee. Do I have a motion to approve as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Do I have a second?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Mr.
Mr. Leos. Sorry.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Did you get that, Ms. Turner? Okay, sorry about that. Item 9, board business. A, discussion regarding possible resolution for the Texas Association of School Boards 2022-2024 advocacy agenda. So what I was thinking we could do this evening is just kind of have a discussion about what we might want to see on a resolution if we want to submit one for the advocacy. And then we can direct staff to prepare a proposed resolution, and then that can come back in the June meeting. This has to, well, if we want to submit a resolution, it's due June 15th. Right, so we would have time to do it at our June regular board meeting before the deadline. So is there anything that anybody would like to talk about, to think about for a resolution?
Do we have a copy of last session?
So I didn't bring a copy of that, but I can tell you that last time it was the charter saturation, where we had that graphic that it showed the number of charter schools that we had, and how it was basically you have this many students, but you have this many seats at a charter and this many seats at public. So you've got too many seats for not enough kids. So I think that is probably still relevant and is one that we might want to put on there. I think in years past, we've done 2 or 3 resolutions.
Didn't we do one with communication with remind me, Omar, when we were in that meeting with oh, his name escapes me. I'm sorry, it's been a long day. We discussed the availability of Wi-Fi, dependable Wi-Fi for our students, because we had, we were in the midst of COVID still.
So a technology like
Yes.
for like equal access
Yes.
to
Thank you.
Modern infrastructure, technology access.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, because
And then just because we're like, I think we're starting to phase away. Things are getting better, right? But that doesn't mean that technology is still there, and everyone should have an equal access to that, regardless of where they're from. So I think that's something to consider. Maybe.
So infrastructure.
Yeah.
And then in the past, we've also advocated for requiring or suggesting or something background checks for candidates for the school board. We did have a resolution on that, and that would, as I recall, that was quite appreciated. Other districts have since brought that up.
Okay. Do you think that's still relevant? It seems like we did that for several years. I'm sorry.
We do that, yes, in Northeast, but we would like to see TASB advocate for that on a statewide level. We do it as a volunteer.
Yeah, we do it as practice.
Yeah.
So the current advocacy agenda that TASB has, looks at, of course, the COVID-19. The past 2 years, the pandemic has been a priority, and then governance, mental health has been part of that agenda, as well as cultural diversity and awareness was part of the agenda and the discussion previously. So maybe, whatever we come up with could fall into some of those categories. Charter schools was in there as well. You already mentioned that.
But I also think school finance needs to.
I was going to say funding, the structural, how we fund schools, and also the piece that piggybacks onto, obviously, that retain and recruit the teachers and staffing. Obviously, there's not just the teachers, there's all the other support staff, but how we tie that in and what we can advocate for if there's changes. I don't know how that would all look, but that structural finance piece definitely needs.
I don't think I read all of them, but it also includes public school finance, student assessments, teacher recruitment and retention, and vouchers.
Okay.
Also, I think I agree with Mr. Hilliard about school finance in general, like funding, maybe a reform on that, and then also teacher and just staff retention in general. We're not just losing teachers; we're losing we need bus drivers. We need cafeteria workers. So I think those two things are important. But also academically, what are we doing? Maybe we can squeeze in there, how to close the COVID gap. How can we catch up, these students that have a learning loss for almost 2 years, because they're still struggling, and I know that we're given some federal resources for that, but maybe talking about more resources to how are we going to close that gap? And
Well,
that's
they're
a
not
very
recurring.
important.
It's a one.
No, exactly.
It's a one and done.
So
You
the
know,
state-
our ESSER funds that we're utilizing to ensure that those gaps are closing and creating programs and the training that's involved with our teachers and the resources. That's it.
But
Like,
it's the
It's not a
process,
gift
you're right.
that keeps on giving.
No, but we need. But what I'm saying is that I think we need to advocate for more of the a push for that, or not to advocate for that, because it's not. It doesn't. We're not going to fix this in 2 years or when those funds end. It needs to be reoccurring. I agree with you. Yeah.
The money may not be there, but at least
Yes.
have some sort of programs or strategy
Something
to help that.
that the state can recognize that this is not a quick fix.
Okay. Anything else?
I think we've covered just about everything. All the things.
Yeah, and
And
with
one more
the overriding is that obviously it's always to help the students improve their academic performance, which all of this is different pieces to the puzzles to do that, because that's why we're here to serve them. But I think those pieces would help us continue to watch them grow and close those gaps that we've been facing the last couple.
Okay. So, Dr. Micah, can you,
Come up with something with all those.
I know that Deb has always been very helpful in crafting these resolutions for us. So,
Yes. So what we'll do, and to the finance one, because that is top of mind, just because we're coming up to budget study 1, we have been talking about budgets and funding and how that is. So we may already have some language there to kind of provide you, and then the rest of them, we'll just bring you some suggestions back, and then you all can edit it and tweak it however y'all want. How's that?
that's perfect. Yeah, and we've got time. So, just have that come back to June, and then we can tweak it if we need to.
Okay.
Okay,
Will
thank you.
do.
Okay, thank you.
Peggy, you wrote those all down, right? I'm kidding.
I have some notes I can give you.
We'll have them in the minutes. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Item 10, new business for possible board action. A, Board Policy 1, possible action regarding revision to Board Policy CQA Local. Ms. Chancellor.
Madam President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Executive staff has been going through local policies as well as regulations just to make sure that they are all accurate and make any changes if necessary. So tonight we're discussing CQA Local, which does have to do with the district website as well as campus websites. The only changes really that are being proposed are the last time that this was updated, web services was housed in a different department, and now web services is under the communications umbrella. So the only language that we are proposing changing is to update that to reflect that it is now in the communications department, and we're asking for your approval of this local policy.
Okay. Did anybody have any questions about this, or?
Nope, she answered.
Just, do we need to do 2 readings for these like we do for new policies, or since these are our current ones, we're just doing like this is just changing the things, it's just a single reading tonight and we're good? Is that kind of the plan?
Yes,
Just wanna make sure, okay.
you can. This is a pretty simplistic change. You always have the opportunity as a board to approve it on a single reading. We do 2 readings with the others just because they're big.
Mhm.
There's a lot for you to sift through, and you may ask some questions, think about it, and come back. This is fairly straightforward.
Yeah, agreed. Just as, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just remind everyone, you all approved a policy, if you'll recall, on a single reading. Mr. Jimenez, it was regarding something that happened, was about 8th graders being able to remain at their campus, right? Through COVID when we had
Yes,
it.
sir. It was, I believe, FDA
Right.
local.
So that was something, if you remember, I think Mr. Byer, you brought it to our attention, and we worked through it, and we're able to make a single change. So it's not unusual. It just depends on the policy.
This is very straightforward. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? So do I have a motion to approve the revised board policy CQA Local as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion carries. Item B, Instruction and Campus Administration 1, possible action regarding approval of employment contracts. Mr. Jimenez.
President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. We bring to you contracts regarding probationary contracts, educator term contracts, and other types of contracts, just for your recommendation. We bring this yearly to you.
Okay. Did anybody have any questions about the contracts?
One question, is this based on the proposed budget for next year? Because I saw it's 86.9% of our annual budget is obviously, but is it based on current pay rate or whatever we haven't seen yet, obviously, the new budget? But is this for next year proposal or is this based on current rate?
Right now, it's current, yes,
Okay,
sir.
so this is based on the current numbers. Okay. Thank you. That's my question. Thanks, Madam President.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? Do I have a motion to approve the proposed recommendations for renewal of employment contracts?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion carries. Item 2, possible action regarding Proclamation 2022 Physical Education and Health Instructional Materials Adoption. Mr. Jimenez.
President Grona, I'd like to invite Dr. Esmeralda Munoz, Executive Director for Learning Support Services, and Jennifer Aguilar, Director for Physical Education and Health, to address this agenda item.
Oh, hold on one second. I'm sorry. We had one person that wanted to speak to it, and I forgot. So I apologize. Give me 3 minutes. It'll be number 4.
Number 4?
My name is Diana Parker. Thank you, trustees, for serving on this board and for your service to our students. I have a master's in teaching degree from Trinity University. I'm a former kindergarten and first grade teacher, and I'm a current NEISD SHAC member. Most importantly, I'm a parent of 2 children in NEISD schools. I am here tonight to ask you to vote in favor of McGraw-Hill Glencoe health materials for middle and high school and to reject Quaver Ed for elementary health and PE for the following reasons. First, the board is being advised to adopt the Goodhart-Willcox instructional materials to ensure that materials cover 100% of the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, TEKS. However, the Goodhart-Willcox instructional materials go way beyond the TEKS with unnecessary and questionable content. There are other ways to meet the TEKS. You do not have to adopt Goodhart-Willcox only because of the TEKS fulfillment. In terms of objectional material in Goodhart-Willcox, I was told that NEISD health teachers would be instructed not to use those particular lessons in the text and that supplemental content would be created by the district to meet those TEKS. My concern is how to ensure all teachers receive this information and follow the correct procedures. Teachers have enough on their plates. Why would we set teachers up for possible grievances if they accidentally use the content they're not supposed to? What is in place to keep students from reading that content in the text on their own? Furthermore, this is a waste of taxpayer money on instructional materials that contain lessons that cannot be used. It is more financially responsible to purchase the Glencoe McGraw-Hill instructional materials that can be used in their entirety and then supplement those materials with district-created lessons to fully meet the TEKS. Second, we owe it to the taxpayers, parents, and students of NEISD to make sure the materials are thoroughly researched before a vote takes place. Reviewing the materials is arduous and takes hours. Through an open records request, I found that only 9 members of the SHAC committee present at the high school, middle school, and elementary school votes actually are on record as reviewing the proposed materials. So 16 voted to approve Goodhart-Willcox Middle School Health, 14 voted for Goodhart-Willcox High School Health, 19 voted for Quaver Ed Elementary PE. For each of those votes, only 9 are on the record for materials review. This calls the process into question and leads me to believe that not all SHAC members who voted actually previewed the materials. Lastly, many parents contacted the SHAC with their preference for the Glencoe McGraw-Hill instructional materials and pointed out red flags in Goodhart-Willcox, including going beyond basic health education with a heavy focus on health self-assessments at middle and high school levels. This may potentially violate the Federal Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. What is being done with the student data that is collected? Goodhart-Willcox displays a shift away from parental authority where students are directed to outside websites such as Al-Anon to make decisions before asking parents, and even asked to research apps designed to support therapy and mental health. This contradicts TEKS that express that students should first seek guidance in the area of health from their parents. Goodhart-Willcox could change, add, or delete the online text content at any time without NEISD board approval. This is an issue of accountability. Problems with elementary Quaver Health and PE include the use of videos to teach skills like kicking and jumping. Our students should be actively participating in games, not watching screens. Many parents also questioned whose values are being taught in
sorry, that's time.
social emotional learning. Thank you.
Okay, now Dr. Munoz, sorry about that.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. First and foremost, this was a team effort. I know that Rachel was in the process of transitioning to leave the district at that time, and so we had established a really streamlined and very balanced way, very transparent and cohesive way of bringing proclamations to the table when it came to these presentations. So alongside with this wonderful team of individuals, we were able to construct a pretty cohesive format for the voting process, and there's a lot of documentation that was given to you all. So just for that transparency, and if y'all do have any questions, just for transparency right now, Ms. Jen Aguilar is going to be, who is our Director of PE Health, will be answering those questions at the end of this presentation. So as part of the PE Health Proclamation overview, the courses with instructional materials that were reviewed are the ones that are listed there, which is elementary PE and health, 6th grade health, high school health 1, lifetime fitness and wellness pursuits. And just as we did with pre-K, we looked at the Physical Education and Health IMA Committee to be able to review the TEKS and the containment of the TEKS in these resources, and we looked for 100% alignment of the TEKS. In order for us to be able to have also a curriculum that was designed in accordance with the TEKS, we went forward and looked at reviewing, creating the rubrics, and looking at also the implementation and recommendation of the NEISD SHAC committee, whose mission is to ensure alignment between the curriculum and NEISD community values. So this process began back in August of 2021. So looking at physical education and health education, we looked at the implementation of committees as we did with previous adoptions. We also looked at making sure that district and campus staff reviewed the material and that there was plenty of time to review that material. We also implemented the same voting process where we were able to give them a rubric for evaluation and they submitted their vote through that link. And then we are now here at this point where we're recommending the final purchase. On the other end, we also have the NEISD SHAC committee, which is the members were also given the materials to review, and we also gave them access to a digital device so that way they could have access to online materials to review as well. Then we looked at the committee voting process and included them as well, and you're going to see a side-by-side later on in this presentation. And then we also have the results of all of the voting. So as I had stated before, August through November, we had phase 1, which is the IMA process was introduced. We established a lead committee in several points. There were campus points of contact identified by each campus. Instructional materials were made available for the selection of the review process, and publishers were notified of the selection process. Phase 2 was November through January, which is where we got together with IMA committee meetings via Zoom. The campus point of contacts were then relayed that information of what their roles and responsibilities were going to be. Instructional materials, again, were available at the campus for the review, and there was a review window which we had to extend due to the inclement weather that we had at that time. Evaluation rubrics were also reviewed, and we had the publisher's open house, which was also conducted via Zoom to give people the ability to go in and look at several publishers and ask the questions that they needed to through breakout rooms. And then we also have phase 3, which is January 2022 until March of 2022. So we had the January 13th public notice on the NEISD website of the instructional material availability. We had the teacher IMA voting process that commenced, and we had the teacher recommendations. So the implementation phase, which is now March through May 2022, we have the publisher negotiations that were final, the final quote for the recommendation, also this presentation that we're going through today, and then the final order and purchase of these materials. The goal is to be able to get these materials in before August. They want to be able to establish a streamlined curriculum that is going to be highlighted through professional development, where they go through these resources intensely so that way the teachers know what access that they have and what access to materials they do have. And then also the delivery of instructional materials, curriculum writing and alignment, and then the ongoing professional development that comes after that. So as stated before, all PE and health teachers attended a curriculum session explaining the proclamation and how it was coming about this year. October 2021, we also looked at establishing those lead committees consisting of middle and high school PE, health department heads, middle school and high school PE and health teachers, and volunteers from the SHAC committee. And again, the committee's goal was to explain the IMA process to the campus teachers and finalize awarding on the IMA evaluation rubrics. In November 2021, we looked at also working in conjunction with elementary principals. We established the points of contact for each of the campuses so that way they would know how to disseminate the information to the teachers. And then we also looked at the PE health department establishing a higher expectation for all materials to be considered for review must meet the 100% of the TEKS, rather than the 50 that's required by TEA. So after all of that, we notified the publishers of the IMA process and how that would take place. We had 21 of the secondary campuses. They had print copies as well as the text. They had the online access as well. Quaver Ed Elementary Health and PE was 100% digital, and online access was shared with all 45 elementary campuses. And the window for that was December 8th through the 21st. So if we look at the committee meetings, they were held from November 29th through December 6th. The campus point of contact then reviewed the roles, expectations, and the timelines. The first meeting was on November 29th, and it was held via Zoom with the secondary campus POCs, their point of contacts, and elementary PE teachers. They went over the discussion items of general expectations, adhering to the timelines, making sure that they met those expectations to be able to submit their vote, and then finalizing all those specific details through the point of contact at their respective levels. We wanted to make sure that everybody was informed on how this process would take place. Elementary, secondary, and SHAC committees, all print materials were available along with printed copies of the Google Form evaluation rubrics so that they could review them. And the window for review, as I had mentioned before, was extended to February 1st. The publisher's hearing and open house was moved to January 27th. And then in order to receive the link for the evaluation rubrics, the teachers had to submit their final evaluation through this rubric, and then they would receive a link to vote. The deadline to submit the final evaluation rubric was extended to from January 28th to February 1st, and the SHAC members were not required to submit an evaluation rubric to submit their recommendation. So the voting process, the original dates of the teacher voting was again rescheduled due to inclement weather, so it had to be adjusted from February 2nd to the 4th of February by 5 p.m. And the SHAC IMA voting process was on February 22nd, SHAC submitted a recommendation for high school PE and high school health. And then March 22nd, SHAC submitted a recommendation for middle school health and PE, elementary PE and health. So we wanted to include a side-by-side of the voting results, and I'm going to have to look at my notes because those numbers are too small for me to read. I apologize. I had to highlight and write in red, so I apologize for that. So for the side-by-side for high school lifetime fitness and wellness pursuits, we had Goodhart Wilcox at 100%. The high school, for SHAC, the high school PE instructional materials, Goodhart Wilcox was at 68%, and 32 did not submit because they formally declined to vote either for or against. The side-by-side voting results for high school health 1, for the teachers, we had Goodhart Wilcox at 55.6%. Mcgraw-Hill was at 44.4%. SHAC, the high school health instructional materials recommendation for adoption, was Goodhart Wilcox as well at 56%, with Mcgraw-Hill at 24%. And we had a total of 20% who formally did not submit a for or against. So the side-by-side voting results for middle school 6th grade health, we have Goodhart Wilcox at 72.2%, Mcgraw-Hill at 27.8%. The SHAC committee, we have Goodhart Wilcox at 51.6%, Mcgraw-Hill at 9.7%, 3% did not submit a vote, and we have a 35.5% who formally declined to either vote for or against. So the elementary health instructional materials, we had the Quaver Ed at 93.3%, PE, elementary PE instructional materials, Quaver Ed at 92.9%. Elementary PE and health instructional materials, we have Quaver Ed at 61.3%. We have 9.7% who decided not who did not submit a vote, and 29 who formally decided not to submit a for or against. So our final recommendation is for Goodhart Wilcox for lifetime fitness and wellness pursuits, health skills, high school health 1, middle school health, and Quaver Health and PE for elementary for that total. What I did include at the bottom was a requisition process. And so just for information, additional information, the allocations that we receive through EMAT are based on student enrollment. And so that allocation that's given to us by TEA, we submit our request for purchase, and then they look at TEKS alignment and they look at other factors as well. And that allotment then is an amount that's deducted. So luckily, for the past couple of years, we've had a very healthy IMA budget that we've gone through the support of Mr. Jarrett as well. We've gone through and made sure that we are making those expenditures correctly and accurately so that we have enough to pay for the upcoming proclamations that happen year after year. So I just wanted to include that in case there were any questions.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
EMAT
ma'am.
is Educational Materials System, but it's EMAT?
Yes, it's instructional materials allotment, and EMAT is the actual platform where we go in to submit our order.
Okay.
Yes. So here we are at the final steps. It's been a year in the making, pretty much. So we have our board presentation, final recommendation, and our implementation that we set before you. And if you have any questions, I have the wonderful Ms. Jen Aguilar who will be available to answer any questions you have.
Do I have board members who have questions?
Yeah, but only, I'm trying to figure out my place. So if anybody is ready. Are you ready?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Here we go.
Go ahead.
Okay. Ms. Aguilar, thank you to the team and all the SHAC volunteers. I want to start off because there's a huge amount of time and energy. And for the community and people that don't know, these are just some of the books. We don't have everything, some of it's online that all of these people looked at, and it's a significant amount, thousands of pages literally, plus support materials. So I don't want to leave them up there so block everyone's view, but thank you because it's a huge amount of time and energy that put into that. And then we as trustees got this about 2 weeks ago, all the material to review. So I guess to start off with the current curriculum, how close to 100% compliance are we with our current curriculum, not the stuff that's proposed, but that we currently are using today in classroom?
Any instructional material that Northeast adopts has to be 100%.
Okay, but what we're using what we're using today is 100% compliant?
To the new TEKS that are coming?
Yeah.
It would not be 100%.
Did we even look at it? Is it close?
I don't know that we did a number for it, but there are lots of new TEKS in that. So this is where I would not have been a part of that process.
I understand you're new to the job, and it's just because if we're only a small part off, we obviously have a lot of talented staff that could, write and do some of this stuff, and it would just be a way to possibly save money if we're already teaching. One less thing they have to learn new stuff versus going to that if we're really close. If we're at 95% on elementary.
They very much changed the philosophy of the TEKS, especially for health, to a skills-based health curriculum, which is very different than content-based. And our previous curriculum was very content-based. It was, we're going to teach this information, and children go forth and do what you can with it. Whereas now it's more about the skills-based of decision-making for making decisions for a healthy life. So it's definitely going to be a bit more skills-based and application-based.
Okay, but we don't know the actual number, how close
I do
our
not
current
have
stuff.
a number.
Okay.
No,
One thing that was highlighted in all of y'all's questionnaires and was asked is the digital-only curriculum. We have several that are digital-only. And in the evaluation rubric, it says digital resources will be updated regularly. And obviously, a lot of people said, yes, this material meets that. The real concern, and it was just expressed by Ms. Parker a minute ago, is that I wrote down as a very significant concern, is if these publishers are changing this curriculum routinely, which they said they can and will do, that's no longer board-approved curriculum. So how would we have configuration control? Because this is an 8-year buy, correct?
Correct.
So, and they said they're going to routinely update it. That would, every time they did it, how would y'all know? How would we come back to us? How would we review it? That seems to me a huge vulnerability and concern, digital-only software.
That's a very good question, and both publishers are going to do that, both Mcgraw-Hill and Goodhart Wilcox. That's part of their digital platform. And it's really more of updating the statistics and things like that. We do know with our health curriculum, and a lot of this is going to be training on our part with our health teachers, they have to follow the curriculum as written. There is not as much leeway because of the law, because of EHAA legal, which is going to be a lot of training on our part with our teachers. We're already planning on walking administrators through that as well, that teachers have to follow the curriculum as we've written it, and they cannot stray from that. And we've already started that with our curriculum writers, talking about those kinds of things. You cannot just go out and find something, including within this. So one of the things that we really tried to clarify with SHAC as well and with our teachers is that the curriculum is the TEKS. This is a resource that we're using to help give our teachers something that they could better teach those TEKS with. So the curriculum will always be the TEKS, and everything has to align to that. So as with our current textbook, there are things in there that we don't use. There are things that we have tweaked and adjusted to fit our community values, with one example being a survey. We do not use the survey as it is currently written in the instructional materials that are adopted. We've adjusted it, and as to my knowledge, and again, I'm new in this position, our teachers have used the approved survey and not used what was in the instructional materials.
But the district will not have the ability to digitally lock out unused modules or things that are not aligned or part of the curriculum.
We can look at that. They do, the publishers, once we have one adopted, since we have two different ones, we were going to look at anything that is permission slip based, we are going to ask to not be included in the regular textbook, because both publishers have offered that they will have a companion text that we can put things into that. So we are going to work with our publishers once we have one to see what all can we put in that companion text and how much we can tailor that once we know.
Thank you for that. The second piece is the elementary one is all digital only.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not trying to be sarcastic here. This is physical activity, but these kids already have so much screen time. And is the expectation that they're going to actually be sitting here? Because I mean, I printed out the second grade kick, walk, kick, catch, throw. Obviously, skills they do all the time. But are they going to be sitting here watching videos? I mean, we obviously have very talented teachers and coaches, but that's what it looks like when I went through all the Quaver Ed stuff. And so this is very concerning because our kids already, in my opinion, need more physical and less digital.
Absolutely, it's going to appear that way. And one thing about that, the Quaver Ed, it's all together. So if we were adopting it for health, we're just getting the PE with it. So our PE teachers are not planning to just show that and go. What it would be great for is days for indoor recess days when the kids can't get out and play because it's an air quality alert day. We've talked about that in SHAC, or it's rain or something like that. It would give the non-PE teacher a way that they could actually access some things, that the kids could get up and moving and do some things in the classroom. Those videos are often dance moves that the kids are going to, move along with. Okay. So it's, and the other thing that the PE teachers mentioned that they really liked about it was for those students who cannot participate, let's say they broke an ankle, and they cannot physically participate, this gives them something that they can work along with, because they could give the kid the Chromebook or the iPad and they could follow along with that part of a lesson from the instructional materials. That's actually what they're doing in class. So in class, they're actually doing the physical movement. And then the last thing the teachers really liked about it was, let's hope this never happens again. But if we ever have to shut down school again, this gives our teachers something that we can actually, without too much of a problem, be able to have some curriculum easily available for our students if they're stuck at home, if they're,
So currently we don't have any of that?
We do not.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Hillary, do you mind if I ask something related to that?
Yeah.
With the iPads or the Chromebooks, do our PE classes currently have enough books Chromebooks or devices for every student that comes in their classroom? Or is it one of those that they kind of share and everybody groups up, looks at a quick module, and then they go and practice?
So I can speak for health. We currently have Chromebooks, a Chromebook cart on every campus for our health instruction. For PE, that's a good question. I'm going to ask.
Specifically for the Quaver Ed.
Not for every student.
No, not for every student.
Okay.
And it's, again, only going to be designed for the students that can't really participate in class. This is not meant to be every kid gets on an iPad and here's your PE. It's there if a student needs it because they can't be in class and they can't participate.
And the intent would be to provide some guidance to the teachers on
Absolutely.
how that's used.
Yes.
Or has that already been developed, or is that? Are
We
you still
haven't
waiting
because we're
until-
waiting.
Okay.
Yes, we're a little bit in a holding pattern right now.
Okay.
You give us back. Yeah, go ahead.
I still think that, can you hear me? Oh, yeah.
Oh, same thing.
It's kind of what Mr. Hillier was saying before about the current instructional materials that we use and how close to the TEKS does it follow. And just for clarification, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, we're adopting these materials because the TEKS have changed, right?
Yes, sir.
Language has changed from that. So the current instructional materials are not going to be 100% because it's changed. And even if we were to use the old instructional materials, that language is different from the TEKS. So whatever the students and the teachers are seeing in the old instructional materials are going to be totally different language from the new TEKS, and that's why we're adopting new instructional materials.
Yes, sir.
And so it would be a daunting task, perhaps, maybe if we were to use the older instructional materials because the language is completely different, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And we are currently working with that right now,
Sure.
just because of concerns of when we can actually get the materials to us once we make a decision and can purchase them. And it's daunting right now just to be able to have it ready for August when school starts, because we have to do the training piece with teachers.
And I understand the concern, or about having a completely online digital PE curriculum, right? But as we all know, I think that in this day and age, we're going to see in future adoptions that everything is going to go completely digital, and we're not going to get any more books. So I understand where that company's coming from, and just on a quick note, I use my Apple Fitness phone to look at while I work out. That I can see where that can be a benefit to somebody that needs to be in a chair to watch something, or for we're doing a group activity together as a class. We're not necessarily looking at the screen 100% of the time, but there's times where that will benefit, I think.
Well, and in almost every grade level, there are now TEKS where students are to create their own fitness plans and monitor data for that. And this is going to be a resource that's going to help our teachers help students be able to do that.
Sure. Thanks.
Next question, and there was concerns, obviously, people call them red flags, whatever. The ones that I saw and I've heard and we saw in some of the different things y'all provide us, thank you, from the different responses, was the concern about age appropriateness for the middle school health for some 11-year-olds. And then the other thing was the mental health assessments in the Goodhart-Wilcox, which gets into the psychological assessments, which gets into parental permission requirements. So how is that being addressed, or the concern? Because that was what I noticed. There's a lot of the self-assessments, and obviously it's been written up.
And again, we have those in our current curriculum, and we do not use them as they are written. So this is actually the first step in this process. The next step is we will take our lesson plans, our curriculum, and present that to SHAC. We're going to identify, we're prepared for doing this very soon, the new information that is in there. These are really TEKS that we had to very much change the lesson as is. And so the first step is, once we have an instructional material, then we can move forward and now start presenting the lessons to SHAC, so they can say, just like in our current curriculum, some lessons were rewritten. SHAC said, no, that does not meet our community values. And so the curriculum writers came back together, they rewrote them, and our teachers very much understand these are the things that you have to use. And when we tell them this is SHAC approved, this is not SHAC approved, they understand what that means. And we will continue to train our teachers on that language.
But the books that we get for the middle school and high school, though, they'll still have the other stuff that's not approved or not what the goal is. Is that correct? I know there's certain things being taken out for the homosexuality, all that stuff, but we are going to get all of the chapters, even if we say we're not going to use those surveys, correct? It'll still be in the book. Students can still read them.
We'll work with that and see what they can do. But yes, they can't, as far as I know, they cannot make it specific to Northeast ISD. Okay. It's going to be a Texas one. But as with our current adoption, we don't use everything as is.
Okay. Mr. Lopez is not here, but I was going to ask, we had this conversation back in February, Mr. Meyer. Did he do a legal review of all the curriculum and spend time going through all of this?
The curriculum as in the TEKS?
No, as in the proposed material.
I don't know that necessarily
Does that
applies
apply-
to the health.
It doesn't
and
apply to
PE.
that.
It only
Is it only
applies
to
to
the
human sexuality
sexualities?
and then
Okay.
the dating violence.
That's just the
and
HSA.
Human
Okay.
trafficking.
Okay, because
So
I know
that-
there's obviously a lot of law changes too, and some things were
Correct.
pulled out, and new TEKS being rewritten, and then some of the dating.
So we're going to start that process as soon as
Okay.
we have this
Okay.
textbook.
So I think, because I went through the 28004 just to make sure,
'Cause, well, so-
knowing from the,
not
yeah.
No, I just saw healthy relationships in chapter 15, some things that were not being pulled out of the here, and it gets on that line. That's why I'm asking the question for the legal.
So we definitely cross-check that back to the TEKS that we have to look at. And so I believe the healthy relationships, and I can't remember off the top of my head, we kind of paper clipped them.
Yeah.
That was my question. So healthy relationships, this part in 15 wasn't paperclip, but it's highlighted as it's going to get pulled out, and that was my question, one of my questions. And so that's where it's starting to get across that line, because then it's doing those definitions that y'all highlighted saying that weren't going to be there.
Which one was it? I'm sorry. Which one was it, Steve? Because Mr. Early, because there was one that was referenced in our parent letter, and it was actually paper clipped. Yeah.
The peer relationships, the second set was, so there were, but page 496, peer relationships, and it starts talking about the healthy relationships, defining friendship, and types of friendship is on page 497, and it starts to go down that road. The other part with the romantic dating and relationships is the next step that is paper clipped off. And so this is just one of those things where it starts to trend in there, and that's the reason I'm asking, because I know, once again, it gets to be nuanced.
And that's what we have our own unit plans that, in our unit planning guide, lesson 1 may be in chapter 3 of this textbook, lesson 2 of our Northeast lesson may be in chapter 8. It's not necessarily is our unit plan going to be the full chapter of anything in that book. Our curriculum writers have bundled the TEKS together into their own units, not necessarily the units of either textbook, but what they felt like as content area experts made sense.
Yeah.
And so we will piece together the pieces that we're going to use
Okay.
within our instructional planning guide.
Okay, great. Are there any conflicts of interest or significant concerns, district employees, publisher relationships? That
Well-
need to be-
While we have all of I want to reference them correctly.
Okay.
The Form 1295s, where every publisher submitted that there were no conflicts of interest. We do recognize that we had a former employee of Northeast ISD, our previous health specialist, who was one of the authors on Goodhart Wilcox.
Right.
We followed up with them to make sure that that was not an oversight on their part, that she might be an interested party, and we were told that she did not fit the definition of an interested party, and everything was.
What steps did y'all take on your end to ensure there, obviously, she's recently retired, but there's lots of relationships. She knows everybody across the PE Health Department, I would assume. So my question would be is how did y'all make sure any of that bias was taken out in the voting process when they're recommending these two things? Because it's easy to go, oh, it's a friend of ours, great person, blah, blah, blah. We're going to say, if she did it, it must be good.
Well, the first thing that we did really to ensure was that voting links were only given to teachers who reviewed both sets of materials. And so if they did not submit a rubric for both sets of materials, then they weren't able to vote. And secondly, as best we could, we asked, every teacher filled out a conflict of interest. And then we asked them when they voted to please give us the reason why they picked one over another. So, trying to really get a sense of an academic reason why you felt like this publisher was better than that publisher. And all of that information was in, I think, one of the appendices in the back.
Okay. No, that's good. All right. So the voting, we obviously went through the voting here, and just a couple things that were highlighted. On page 27 of our book for the trustees, it said 13 members of the SHAC and 23 community members made appointments and reviewed materials at the Northeast Sports Park. Ms. Parker just said only 9 did based on her open records request. But anyways, there's 48 voting SHAC members, correct? There's only 2 that aren't, the 2 trustees for obvious reasons they don't get to vote. So that's only, 25% of the SHAC members came to Northeast Sports Park and reviewed material in some form, in some shape?
Yes, but I believe as this process was set up, it wasn't meant for all of SHAC to come review. It was meant for the health subcommittee to review. So I have this.
But was everybody allowed to vote? So everybody got to vote, even if they didn't review the material, they just took the recommendation from the health subcommittee?
Yes, because our understanding was by law, EHAA, they were allowed, everyone was allowed, which was why we reminded that they could abstain if they had not felt like they had reviewed the materials, which I think is why we had a lot of abstentions for those votes.
Okay, and for the folks that did review, do you have average time spent, like the SHAC members, when they came to Northeast, were they there for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, days?
Mr. Hill, I spoke to one just a couple days ago, and she said she spent hours. She didn't say the number of hours, but she spent
No, I'm
hours.
just, do y'all,
So, I mean, I don't know why we're digging into the
I don't,
minutiae of the
I
minutes
don't know
people
that we
spent
kept that.
on
I
it.
know
Well,
one
I'm
member
trying
came
to
3 times.
to get a feel of
I get it,
if
but
they
you're
were
trying
quick
to
reviews?
pigeonhole people into saying,
No,
well, I
but-
spent 152 hours on this.
No,
and I
no,
don't
no.
think that's-
I'm talking, did they do a quick one-day review? Because we were told to do 2 hours, or obviously this material takes hours and hours, and everyone has the time, and obviously they're volunteers in the shack. I'm just trying to get a feel of how much they reviewed this material before they make
But
recommendations.
Mr. Hilliard, when we're given our materials, I'm not asking you, I'm trusting that you're going to spend significant time on reviewing the materials. I'm not going to question you because I trust that you're going to do that. And so I think that's what my question is like. I think when we're giving the shack members or the members that are reviewing this material, we're trusting that they're going to spend some time on them, just like we are given time and you're trusting me that I'm spending time reviewing this material.
I understand, and I also understand that there's volunteers and there's a lot. So I'm trying to get a feel because we only had a small percentage that looked based on what you said because they were the health subcommittee. But this stuff, I don't know how many hours, and I'm not going to ask anyone else out. But there's pages, I haven't even gotten to everything. I started looking for big themes and spending hours and hours and hours to make sure we are getting those community values and those reflections done. So that is the reason I'm asking for the concern, because we had lots of people vote, but maybe didn't review the material.
And they voted, so again, we expected that the health subcommittee would be the main ones who would actually come up and review that, because then they present to the shack. And so this is why what we'd hoped would happen in one shack meeting wound up being 2, because we tried to relay all of the information from what we'd gotten from emails, everything, and just be very open and very transparent about it. Take opportunities to answer questions and vote on one resource at a time as we went. So that was how we tried to ensure that they felt comfortable that they could vote, in looking at that. But we did, so I think perhaps some of the confusion on those numbers, 13 came to review. I double checked again today. 9 submitted a rubric. So that might be where that discrepancy was. So only 9 did a rubric, but 13 came up. And yes, some came multiple times.
Okay. On the last slide, just for the cost and understanding the process, if we, the board, it's the last one here just shows the process. If we chose to substitute Goodhart Wilcox with McGraw-Hill and one or more of these, would the payment process and everything else be the same?
The numbers would be very different. McGraw-Hill, actually, I believe, I don't want to speak, but I know we were getting a better deal on our TEs, our teacher editions. With Goodhart Wilcox, we weren't going to have to pay out of pocket for any of those, and those become one of the most expensive items in IMA. So I would have to go back and look at that. So all of those numbers would change. I don't know what the total would be.
No, but it would be ballpark same, plus or minus some money, and the process would be the same.
Yes, the process of purchasing
It
them
would
would
be the same regardless, as long as it's approved, TEKS approved.
I don't want to overspeak. I'm going to turn to Dr. Munoz on that one, because McGraw-Hill is an off-list publisher.
Well, and that's the question I was asking. So if we pick an off-list publisher, we changed one of them.
So that's why it goes through the whole process. We submit it for approval, and we do have our allotment based, like I had mentioned, on student enrollment. And they decide how much from our allotment we're going to receive to pay that out. So if it's 80%, 90%, that's essentially why we like to stick to 100% TEKS, because it is aligned to what the state has already adopted.
I thought McGraw-Hill was 100% as well. They just weren't SBOE recommended.
Correct.
But
And
they're
so
still 100%.
Either way, if we would have gone with either one, they were 100% TEKS. The initial review
Okay.
was to sift out those that met 100% of those TEKS.
Okay.
Then after that is when they dove into all of the documentation and the review process, and then that way when we do submit, then we do get that particular amount that we've submitted for. It's 100% part of that allotment.
Okay. So that's the same process regardless of which one,
Yes.
as long as it meets that other requirement.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
And Mr. Hilliard,
Yeah,
it was
that's it.
one of your questions were you trying to get at was one more expensive than the other? I mean, is that, I mean, because I actually had that.
I was trying to understand if there was a significant difference, because I know each publisher, because we're going to need the same amount of materials, but obviously they're going to cost different. But was one like significantly more or significantly within reason, because we want to make sure we're giving the best education to each child?
Well, I had that same question I was going to ask later. What's the cost of McGraw-Hill versus Goodhart? And I didn't find
One thing that did jump out to me
all
with
these
some
documents.
of the publisher answers was that some of the McGraw-Hill stuff, there was additional, well, I don't know if it just said they could do customization, they could add modules, that kind of thing, but it didn't necessarily, I don't know if that's additional cost on top of what quote they're going to give us or
Right.
how that works.
So what we try to do, at least since I've been here in the past almost 2 years, we never try to go with this is the cost of the material, first and foremost when we're going through an adoption. We want for the teachers to look at it as a blank canvas and say, what is the best resource for our kids? Then after that, we look at the resources and what one particular publisher is going to offer versus the other. And that's where the negotiations start to happen. And so we never really want to say, well, this one's a little bit more expensive, so we're not going to offer you that one. We want them to look at it like they're going to get the Cadillac version or Mercedes-Benz, whatever it is that y'all, that whatever car you like, that's what they're going to get, because that is going to be the best option for their kids. It's going to lend itself to the best curriculum resources, and it's going to be able to add to their educational experience. So we never try to put that forward. Now, in this particular case, we're giving you what was voted upon, and I know that Jen has all of the documentation for exactly what the cost is for the other resource, if that's something that y'all are interested in seeing.
But, and I don't necessarily need to compare dollar to dollar, and I appreciate that you don't want to put that in front
Yeah.
of the teachers or even the shack, but when it comes to this level,
Absolutely.
there is a dollar amount that we have to be somewhat concerned with. So if there's I don't want to harp on it too much.
Okay.
I mean, I see the number in front of me here.
Yes.
That was my last question, Madam President. Thanks. And that was kind of where I was going, just the overall what it looked like cost-wise.
Okay. Anybody else with questions?
I do, but I'm still trying to piece together. Go ahead, Terry, if you're ready. Okay.
I had a few. Stack of books here.
No kidding.
So, well, I know there was, maybe you can summarize it. You know, I looked through all the matrices and things like that, but what do you feel might have been some of the objections to the McGraw-Hill proposal?
I don't know that there were objections to it. I think we encouraged the teachers in their voting and through the rubrics to decide which they felt would best support them in accomplishing the goals and the objectives as laid out in the TEKS. I think from what we saw on the comments in summary is that they felt like McGraw-Hill might not be as engaging to students visually. That was one of the comments that we had heard from our teachers. And that they felt the Goodhart Wilcox was going to just engage their students better. That was a lot of what we kind of saw and heard. And I would have to go through and look at every one of those comments again, and I know it's teeny tiny type.
Okay.
But for the most part, that was really, a lot of them kind of referred to the McGraw-Hill as they just thought it was bland and that it would not engage their students.
Okay.
I did, Mrs. Williams, if I can. I wrote notes actually on top of the comments, and just about every grade level stressed that it was a TEA TEKS approval, 100% TEKS approval. There was one in the Goodhart Wilcox had an ADHD dyslexia component to it that was not, I believe, in the McGraw-Hill. The other was that they felt like there was more current content in the Goodhart Wilcox, and it included more parent in engagement. That was the middle school piece. The elementary comments, they both actually referred to TEKS, but I think, as you said, that's the Quaver piece. And I think that's all that I highlighted, but hang on, I may have more. The Good Heart Wilcox has, hang on a second.
But
read
those were
my-
the comments that was in
Yes.
in the materials, and I did read those.
Are you speaking to the comments from teachers or from parents?
From either, just if you
So
if
from
you
the
have any
teachers,
insight.
all of those comments were what was part of the ones who submitted the rubrics and the voting. And so those are who we gathered them from. So we would not have gathered them from other people. So those were all the comments that we provided as part of those rubrics. So maybe I'm
Okay.
not understanding the question.
That's okay. I mean, we read it, everything. I just didn't know if there was some other insight, because part of the binder that we have included emails from parents or others making different recommendations.
And that was to the shack. Yes, ma'am.
Right. So I didn't know if there were objections, any objections.
We did not
from the
get any.
shack. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't get any emails, and we presented all of those emails to Shack to make sure that everyone was fully informed. So we did not receive anything from teachers similar to that, which completely understand, right? You would think that it would be there. We also had the publishers Q&A available on our
I saw
website
that.
for teachers and parents. So everybody was, we really tried to be transparent with all the concerns that were out there so that everybody could look and see for themselves kind of where those concerns lie.
Okay. Well, it's been quite some time since I took help in middle school as well as high school. I also, as my sons, because they graduated from Roosevelt, a lot more recent than I did, 2009 and 2011, on some of the topics that's in here, and what their thoughts were as opposed to, would they like this? Did they, appreciate the value of getting this in school, or all of these things, were these things that they would have come to me and their dad about? Immediately I got, oh no, we don't want to talk to you and dad about that, about some of the subjects, or did they learn it from friends, like a lot of kids do, or TV, or nowadays social media? So, I kind of did a little bit of more recent student research, if I can, knowing that a lot of the information that's currently in here is a little more than, again, what I got in health. It basically focused on nutrition, knowing our bodies at certain times, and the typical things. What was not included in my day was being mentally and emotionally healthy, embracing your identity, avoiding hazardous substances, vaping and tobacco, alcohol, medication and drugs, understanding diseases and disorders and things like that, STDs and all of that. So I know in some of in the middle school curriculum or books here, it took a different approach. A lot of these were more in the high school category, which is probably more appropriate for the high school. So, in looking at that and realizing, I guess, that TEKS now requires a lot of things beyond just your normal basic, what you might call basic health.
Yes, ma'am, it does. And the strands for the TEKS, not to get into too much teacher geek language here, the strands for the health TEKS are the same K-12, and social emotional health is one of those. And just on a personal note, the last meeting we had with our K-Shack, our student Shack members, which is a subcommittee, we asked them, we talked a lot with them about health curriculum, and the question we posed to them was, if you could take a field trip anywhere for your health class, where would you want to go, and how would that benefit your health education? And the majority of our answers, the students wanted to visit some kind of mental health facility. And wanted to hear from people who had gone through adversity and had mental health issues and how they overcame that. And that was staggering for us to hear that from our KSHAC kids. And it was almost across the board. They wanted support for their mental health.
And that's great. I also thought was unusual to have in health was cultural and ethnic identity, and
that is not part of our TEKS. So we'll have to look deeply into that, right? So again, kind of to Mr. Hilliard's point, all of our textbooks, even our current adoptions, sometimes go beyond the TEKS. In any adoption, we'll do that, but by law, we will stick with our TEKS in health and look at all of that.
Okay, well, I think I saw this already in here. I don't think it was paper clipped, but
well, paper clipped really meant that it was a permission slip based unit.
Sure.
And so that was something that we were going to work with the publishers to put in our companion text, or just not to publish in this one because we don't know that we'll buy a companion text from either publisher when we start looking at that. So it could be in this book, but it wasn't necessarily a permission slip base, but when we look at it, we're not sure that will work into one of our unit planning guides because, again, our curriculum is based on our teachers take all of the TEKs and they bundle them together into units of study. So if there's not a TEK, and I'm trying to remember off my top of my head K through 12 every TEK, which is kind of a lot. I know that's not a full strand. I know there's not an identity strand. So, just depending on how our teachers have bundled the TEKs, like I said, we will then kind of pick and choose different pieces and put them together into our own unit of study.
Okay. And so, like you mentioned that, and I know you kind of mentioned that earlier, would there be a way to monitor what we pick and choose, or?
So it will go to SHAC, will be our first step. We are trying to have some of that actually prepared for our next SHAC meeting so that they can take a look at what we're trying to do because we don't have a textbook. So we kind of moved CPR and first aid up a little bit in the curriculum because that doesn't really change no matter what text we go. So we tried to put some of those things at the front that we can very easily change how we're teaching that because, again, it goes to the new TEKs are more skills-based, so students now have to demonstrate at the high school level CPR and first aid. At middle school, they actually don't have to demonstrate. They have to describe, which that kind of helps us out a little bit. Now we don't need as many mannequins because we can shift those all to high school. So we're kind of looking at that to get those to SHAC. So that will be our first step. And then compliance is, again, on us for training with our teachers and making sure part of that training, and it's actually written into the introduction of the TEKs, is our health teachers understanding the law, especially all the changes in the law. So that is one thing we already have on our plan for Curriculum Day for all of our health teachers is to really walk them through the law so that they understand what they can and can't do. That this isn't like another content area where you may be able to veer a bit on your scope and sequence because no other content area has to have that approval from SHAC like we have to.
Okay. And then lastly, is SEL part of the curriculum?
Yes, ma'am. It's a TEK for both PE and for health. They call it social emotional health, not social emotional learning. And it's mainly teamwork, good responsible decision making, personal accountability. Those are some of the big concepts in that.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for asking that question, Ms. Williams, because that was my first question. There were, in parent letters, there was a lot of concern about that. And I think that they had a misunderstanding. Fortunately, being fortunate to be, overseeing or in that committee, sitting on that committee as a non-voting member, I know that was a question that was asked during our one of the meetings, and you described it, and I know that there is a great misunderstanding of what that means throughout the district. I've heard it the last few months. It's kind of been a buzzword. And so is there any way to, are our TEKs on, is this TEK specific to this unit on our website where teachers can, where parents can access, so they can know exactly what we're speaking to?
So
when
all
the
TEKs
TEK says-
are public information, and they are on TEA's website. We are currently working on a TEKS flipbook because one doesn't
Yes.
exist for the new
Yes,
TEKs right
'cause
now.
It's a big document, like not where they would have to go and kind of try to filter through, but a place on our website, where they could see, and it's there for them, so they can know the truth about what social emotional health is and not all the things that they're describing in their letters.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we've already begun working on is something that we've not had in the health curriculum previously that every other content area has, is a year at a glance or a semester at a glance kind of document that spells out the big understandings of what students are learning in that unit. We are working on those right now. Those are mostly finished. Again, that is based on TEKs, and it is our curriculum writers coming together. They've bundled these TEKs that they all think work together, and what are really the big ideas that kids are going to walk away with? What are they going to know and be skilled at when they walk away? And then from there, we have the unit planning guide. So mentioned on the semester at a glance or year at a glance, depending on the course. The TEKs are listed at the bottom that we're focusing on. Then when you go into a unit planning guide, which that one is more for teachers, but it actually spells out the TEKs, but there will be a very easy way for our parents to be able to see what those TEKs are. We will make public our document because it's really just the state of Texas putting an easier to read document. Right now, if you tried to read it from the state of Texas, you would have quite the headache.
A little.
We did include the draft of what we're doing with that flipbook. It's in your Exhibit C. That was the same document that we had shared with Shaq. We're doing it for PE as well because the PE TEKs really changed again as well to be much more in the concept of it's about teaching kids to enjoy physical activity so that they will make decisions for a lifetime to be physically active. And it's not just about teaching them sports.
Okay. You answered a lot of my questions earlier. I did have one last piece, just for I'm just curious to know, a lot of, I understand the concern about how many community members came and, SHAC members actually came and reviewed materials, but do you know how many community members actually came and reviewed material? Because we had, I think, 16 letters, but there were...
So 3 signed in at the Northeast Sports Park to come review.
Okay.
That were outside of Shaq. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, so 3 letters, but they were 3 community members rather, but we had letters that were multiple information. So my concern is, they're saying their language seems very strong in that this is what I want, and but they're not saying how they want the information or why they're opposed to the information other than it's a piece that they took from another letter. It's exact same language. So I think that we, need to consider that was the review of 3 parents, not 16. I think that's important to remember. And I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd kind of like to follow along with that in the 16 emails that were sent to Shaq. They brought up the 2 political issues, not education issues, political issues. And it seems to me that those were addressed last year in Senate Bill 3. And I did not know if that is part of what affected a lot of the changes that we're seeing in health curriculum nowadays too, because that was very specific in its wording.
I would have to research that. I'm not positive on that, but the TEKS review started several years ago. So I would have to do, I'm not as familiar with Senate Bill 9, but not as much with 3.
Well, and just maybe some parents are not aware that the Texas Senate did address those political issues in SB 3, so that might help a little bit to understand some of these things. I got to tell you, I really kind of enjoyed going through these. It was really kind of fun to have the teacher edition it was fun to have the answers.
Yes.
You always wanted to grab the teacher's edition when you were in school, just to get the answers. I appreciated the fact that you paper clipped the pieces. I mean, the chart here was interesting, but paper clipping these parts, and I think I'd like to get a little bit of clarity on that. So at this point, the publisher will not be taking those sections out of the Texas edition of their book. I mean, I think they made it very clear that they do an edition just for Texas.
So they do an edition just for Texas. Those are our permission slip based pieces that we are going to ask that they remove because they have assured us that they can do certain modules. So we're really going to fight to say we would prefer that all the permission slip based stuff not be in this textbook because we have to, all of that has to go into the resolution from Senate Bill 9 that we have to look at all. We get to do this all over again for HSAE, for child abuse prevention, for violence prevention, for all of that. So we've asked, let's get all of that out and not in this book. So to avoid the student accidentally reading something that is a permission slip based lesson, we don't want them to be able to have easy access to that.
And it could just be me, but to me, that's a lot of the little green flags. It seemed to me that the Goodhart had a lot of support for teachers. Not that McGraw didn't have some really good support too, but Goodhart seemed to really help our teachers a lot with support, with plans, with ideas, with it just seemed to be a lot of interaction that they helped to provide.
And I believe that's what the comments that the teachers made. That was how they felt about it as well.
Okay, I saw that in the comments, but I had, before I even read the comments, I had noticed that too in here. I didn't know what order to read all this stuff in. That's the other part too, is I am so impressed and thankful and grateful for all the work that went into bringing us all of this. It's not, I hope people understand that this has been a very transparent process, that it's been a very well thought out, very deeply researched. I tried to go a little bit extra into particularly when there was only the one elementary, and to find that our SBOE, that this was the only one, and we have a very conservative SBOE, and for them to say that this was it for them, that kind of carries a lot of weight too. Of course, the fact that it's 100% TEKS, so we know we're totally in compliance with the law there. I personally thought that the online stuff was very cute. It was very friendly. It was very cheerful. That was nice. I didn't do any of the dances or stuff. I wasn't into all that, but it was really cute. But thank you, to staff, to everyone, to Shaq for all the time and effort that they have put in to bringing all of this today. It was really impressive. The thoughtfulness. I appreciated especially where the parents were questioning, particularly Goodhart, I think, and their responses to the questions in, I think was it in Proclamation?
I think it's in both books. Yes, the Q&A.
The teeny tiny writing, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
They were their responses, both of the published. Let's see, it doesn't seem that McGraw had as many responses, but Goodhart really, they were very thoughtful and very thorough in their responses. So I really appreciate that, and I hope those parents got those responses and it helped. So.
Thank you for your kind words, and I do want to say I did come into this process really late, so all of that kudos goes to these two people sitting right here, along with Dr. Munoz's guidance and Mr. Jimenez, because I came in very late to the process and questioned a lot of things. And
though you came late to the process, I have a feeling that you probably had to jump right in and get caught up too. So you were
it was a
probably
team
like
effort
us,
for
drinking
sure.
from the fire hose the last couple of weeks on these things. So thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have something else?
So also and I know Ms. Winkley mentioned the number of emails in here is really, more like 3 different ones instead of 16. And I guess I'm trying to to understand, for lack of a better term, if you will. We've already said this is not SEL, it's health-based. But, I'm seeing words like inclusivity is wrong and equity is wrong. And I'm just not understanding the thought process there. Have you had any parents or anyone comment to maybe explain the thought process on that?
No, ma'am, just the conversations that at our SHAC meetings, which those are all public record for anyone who wants to watch them. They're posted on our website. I think we're caught in a political war right now, and a little bit of a culture war. And so there is a misunderstanding of what Texas has defined SEL as. And I don't think it was necessarily those same. And that is why we provided the TEKS, so that everyone could see exactly when we talk to SEL, and not to say that any of those things are bad either. But I have not gotten any clarification on those concerns other than what was in the email and what was presented at the SHAC meetings.
And I'm thinking about the parent that came to us earlier during Matters from the Floor, who mentioned, her daughter being, called a name. And, kids do things, they say things that's, we don't know where they, got things from. But everything's a learning experience.
Our current first unit in high school, I believe Katie can correct me if I'm wrong, is actually healthy communication, where we talk about, and obviously some SEL in there on thinking about, we talk about brain development and how that impacts and how we think before we post or before we speak or some of those things. So that is part of healthy communications in our first unit with these new TEKS. And again, our new TEKS are all about application and skill-based, so they actually have to demonstrate healthy communication in our health classes this year.
Okay. And one last question, just for clarity. And I believe we said that everything is taught online, or do the students actually get books?
So for high school health and middle school health, they get books. What is 100% online is the one high school PE course that is the fitness and wellness pursuits, because that's really kind of the science of wellness, which is very different than what it's been before. They're going to talk about biomechanics. They're going to talk about a lot of those things. So that one is digital only. And for the teacher only. The students don't even get that one. It's resources for the teachers to use in the classroom with kids. That's the high school PE. And then the Quaver Ed is 100% digital for students and teachers at the elementary level. All of the others will have digital and classroom sets of books, not one book for every student, classroom sets.
Okay, so these books that we're seeing, the teacher editions, the students will actually get their, or have access to their version.
The student edition, yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
The student edition.
Yes.
Okay.
And they will be hardcover. They will, Goodhart Wilcox will be a hardcover book. That was our first question. We said those aren't going to last a year. Do those come in hardcover? And so they do.
They won't be this big.
No. Especially when we take those pieces out. Hopefully not.
Yeah, that's 600 and something pages.
Yeah, I can just see a student looking at that and thinking, what did I get into?
More importantly,
Thank
do
you.
they get buttercrust book covers to put on them?
Yes, and
The old
pencils.
Paperback cover, yep.
Pencils.
I did have one quick follow-up question.
And the bread.
About bread. I don't know if you've entered into this part of the discussion with the publishers, either one, but with supply chain issues and costs increasing and everything, are we in a good spot to where we're not going to get hit with an extra?
We hope. We did have those conversations prior and asked them where they were in their publishing parts and where we were. And we did, kind of let them know, like, this is what we're looking at doing. They assured us that it was going to be okay. Worst case scenario, we'll have the digital licenses to start. So that would be a start. And we do have in writing from both publishers that we have permission to print anything. For that. It doesn't help us on the paper side of things. But if we can't get the printed textbook in time, we would have digital and could print as needed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sandy.
And I forgot I had one more. And that kind of reminded me, when we were talking earlier about updates and things like that, can you go a little bit deeper into the type of updates and any updates would have to be TEKS aligned?
They would have to be TEKS aligned. Our understanding is one thing that we've seen, and we hear this concern from our health teachers very often, is the data is always out of date by the time the book prints. So most of those updates, to our understanding, is going to be updating the data so that it is current and up to date. If it were some type of article or something of that nature that we were encouraging them to use, we would obviously look at it, it would go to SHAC, and we would make sure that it was appropriate. So again, our health teachers, this is going to be a huge training piece. They have to stick to our instructional planning guide and our resources. And just because it's in the textbook doesn't necessarily mean it's been SHAC approved. That's our training piece with our teachers.
And that part does concern me. Our teachers already have so much on their plates. Not that I don't trust them completely, and huge respect, particularly for the teachers of something so critical and so volatile as these issues are. But what you brought up too has, for years and years and years, there's always been a great concern about outdated information in any textbook, whether it's history or social, any type of subject. So it almost seems to me that the ability to update would be a good thing, but as long as you are running it through SHAC, and I think that is a great, because that parent voice from SHAC is so vital.
And it is something we have to consider no matter which publisher we go with, because all publishers are doing that at this point for that exact reason. So that's going to be an obstacle that we're going to have to figure out no matter what.
Yeah, that another point of clarity. So both publishers would be doing updates. So it would not hold it against one or the other.
Yes, ma'am. Both publishers were bragging that they would do updates to their curriculum online.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm going to speak real quick, but I would like to piggyback off of what Mr. Hilliard said. When you speak to the publisher, should they approve this evening, I want you to ask them that any updates that you are provided, a list of what, where, and that piece, so that you all can review it to make certain it's appropriate. Because I don't want to get down this path and they're updating things that we have no idea about. And all of a sudden we find out after the fact. I think the publishers owe it to us to provide us those updates, and I would prefer them before they come out.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anything else? All right, do I have a motion to approve the 2022 proclamation instructional materials purchases as presented by the 2022 district level Instructional Materials Committee, and certify that all students will be provided with instructional materials that cover 100% of the Texas essential knowledge and skills?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leos. Do I have a second?
Second.
Go ahead, Mr. White.
Ms. Winkley, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
The motion carries. Thank you so much, Ms. Aguilar and Katie and Brandon and Dr. Munoz and everybody who's worked on this for so long. Item C, operations. 1, possible action regarding crosswalk construction proposal by City of San Antonio and Morgan's Wonderland located in Heroes Stadium Complex parking lot. Dr. Mitchell.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Mike, executive staff, and guests, we bring to you this evening for your consideration the installation of fencing and a crosswalk at Hero Stadium parking lot. A little bit of history. In 2018, Northeast ISD and Morgan's Wonderland entered into an agreement that allows visitors to use the parking lot at Hero Stadium to visit Morgan's Wonderland. They pay an annual fee for that. Morgan's Wonderland is finishing up a new addition to their facility, the Multi-Assistance Center. It's across the street from Hero Stadium. And they have offered at their cost to install and maintain fencing and a crosswalk at the parking lot at Hero Stadium. The purpose of the fencing and the crosswalk is to kind of funnel people so they're not just crossing David Edwards Boulevard, and it to be safer for patrons that use the facility, patrons that include our staff and some of our families as well. So we bring this for your consideration and approval.
And it's not going to cost us anything,
No,
right?
they will also maintain the fencing and the crosswalk.
We are paying $0. This is really, as you heard this evening from two of the folks that spoke from Matters from the Floor, the community with students that are disabled, right? They do have a struggle. And so Gordon has really built a great complex that is super inclusive. And so one of the things that he has been working with, because he called me truly with a high level of concern because this process has been moving so slow. And so really what this is, and we vetted it through Coach Parker over at BAC and everything, is it's 2 parking spots in the Heroes. This will be, they already rented anyway from us for parking. It's just to put these so that they can truly put up some like cement pillars that it's really just to allow them to cross, because as you heard that one woman tonight, you know, she said, my child elopes. That is part of Gordon's concern, is that child can come out of the car and take off running. This is really providing a safe place. And look, I believe a lot of our families will benefit from it, because we do have a great deal of families in our Northeast community with those types of needs. So, but it is zero to us. We are paying nothing.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Mr. Byer, were you?
Say before we go any further discussion and or questions and or action, recusing myself from this particular item due to an existing relationship with one of the parties involved.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the construction plan for Morgan's Wonderland, which installs fencing and a crosswalk connecting the Hero Stadium parking lot and the Morgan Wonderland MAC building?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leos. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And one abstain.
One abstain.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Ms. Grona, before you move to consent, I do want everyone to know that on the page under Dr. Mitchell, it's under professional services contracts, construction contracts, and related contract amendments. There are there are 7 items. I do not want you to take any action on the last 4.
What page is that?
All right?
This is page 69, Dr. Micah?
69, yes, sir. So there's 7 items listed. I do not want you to take any action on the last 4. We need to, these are federal dollars, and we need to make certain that we followed a federal process. So we're just going to be super cautious here and not want you to act on these. Everybody find it? Page 69? There's 4 items there. It's all about testing, balancing, and commissioning services. Okay?
Oh, okay.
I got it.
Okay. It's the last page.
Yeah.
It's to be out.
Okay, okay. All right, so next item, D, consent. 1, business services. A, investment officer authorization. B, authorized representatives text pool and text pool prime. C, authorized representatives Lone Star. D, Commerce Bank authorized persons. E, waiver of penalties and interest. F, 50,000 purchases. G, bid items. 2, operations. A, district-wide environmental services indefinite delivery quantity project bid award approval. B, professional services contracts, construction contracts, and related contract amendments supporting the 282 ESSER 3 program funds design and construction requirements. 3, minutes from April 2022. 4, end of consent. Do I have a board member wishing to pull an item from consent?
Madam President, can I pull D to B, the last 4 items as previously discussed?
Okay, anybody else? All right, so do I have a motion to approve consent without D to B?
So move.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. All right, Mr. Hilliard.
I would recommend that we approve the first 3 items listed there and refrain from approving the other 3 as discussed based on the federal dollar discussion previously had. Is that appropriate?
4.
Sorry, 4.
4 items.
Approve the first 3, pull the second 4. The last 4.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All those, so to approve
Yep.
2B, the first 3 items and not the last 4.
Yes, ma'am.
So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Item 11, reports. A, interim financial and management reports. B, awarded bid report. C, third quarter investment report. Those have been provided for you. Item 12, discussion and possible action regarding board members' request for items to be placed on a future agenda and our request for reports from the administration. Do I have a board member wishing for a report or something?
I do, Mrs. Grona.
Yes.
Dr. Micah, the two parents that spoke today, that spoke to the care or some programs regarding students with autism, and I, you know, I don't know what we can do, what resources we have, grants, anything that we could find to help assist our families that don't have the resources provided to them that most of our families do during summer programs. So I just charge you with trying to find something. There's got to be something out there. Maybe something new that we haven't been introduced to. It's a request to look for resources to help our students with autism in summer programs, and when they, you know, that are, and I don't know if it has to do with transportation, getting them to SAISD where they do have a respite program.
Okay, so do I have a second for that? Well, do we need to?
Do I need to make
is this?
that?
I guess.
If we're asking,
No,
It's
I don't
not a
think-
report.
Can you, are you aware of any information? Is there any information you can provide for us?
Yeah, I can send you an email with some information.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have anything? Nope. All right. Item 13, adjournment, and the time is 8:41. Thank you all for being here.